Welcome to this episode of A Facilitator's Journey. Today I'm talking to Jed Futter. He's a negotiation trainer, but he works in a space called GSCOP, which he'll explain to us, but it's how suppliers can understand the retailer's world. We talk about his first 3 years in business and how he was made redundant and then set himself up as a trainer, and how the first 2 years were fine, but by year 3, things were a challenge. Spoiler alert, it's 9 years on. He's still doing what he's doing. But what did he do? And we dive into his idea of how you manage a pipeline and also the world of PR. So the invitation is get a cup of tea, pull up a chair, sit down and tune in your ears and enjoy this episode with myself and Jed. So welcome, Jed, to the Facilitator's Journey. How are you today?
I'm going all right. So a little bit damp outside, but getting by.
Welcome to the UK is what I say. So Jed, one of the questions I ask all my guests is, how do we know one another?
We know one another because I had to change my business. And we actually know one another because for years, my business was all done face to face, and then COVID happened, and I had to pivot pretty quickly. And I did it within a month. And we met via LinkedIn, I think it was via Rob Gerety, because I needed to know how to do things online.
Yeah.
And that's how we first met. And then when we did meet, we thought, oh, actually, I've got more than one connection here.
Yeah.
So.
And Rob Gerety, he did an episode. He's in episode 2. Episode 3 of the podcast. So he has gone before, but he's a good person as well to know. He does presentation training, which is amazing. So yeah, the power of social media and the power of the need to change and how it brings us to meet other people. So can you describe for the listeners and the viewers, what do you do?
What I do now is I work with suppliers who work with grocery retailers. So my background is I'm an ex-buyer. So I've worked in retail for over 30 years. I worked in every part of a retail outlet, whether it's store, whether it's supply chain, whether it's buying. And now what I do is I work with suppliers because I want them to be able to work better with the retailers. So that is what I do. So I use all of my skills that I've had over the past 25 years in retail to help them better and to better understand who they're working with.
Yeah. And in particular, is there anything in particular you are helping suppliers? And just so everyone else understands, a supplier could be Mars, it could be Unilever, it could be a farmer, a farming chain.
It's anybody who supplies, but really I would say it's small, medium-sized businesses. So it's not. I don't work with startups, and I don't work with people like Mars or Unilever because they're too big.
Oh, okay.
So I don't. So it's kind of the. Actually, I think it's the big pond in between those. So there's loads of giants, and there's also startups, and that's not my my key area where I can think I can add the most value. So I work with all those, and what I do is help them things like negotiation skills, helping with a cost price increase, selling skills, and GSCOP, which is the Grocery Supply Code of Practice, which is something that I've been doing now for the past 9 years.
And it's quite a unique set of knowledge and skills that is unique to retailers, isn't it? It's not found anywhere else.
It is, yes.
But you are well positioned to bring that to life. So a trainer, facilitator, a coach, and in the space of working with suppliers into retail. So let's go back to the beginning of this journey. How did you come to leave the world of retail?
It was a surprise to leave the world of retail.
Okay.
Because I'd been there for 14 years, and I mean, my time with Asda had come to an end emotionally anyway.
Yeah.
So I was disconnected to them, but they also thought it was time for me to go as well. And sometimes in business, that happens. So you part ways,
Yeah.
and then you agree to part ways, and the business agrees to pay you to part ways. So that is what happened.
Okay.
So, and it's because that happened that I was then able to start doing what I'm doing now.
And I think that's a really common thing that does happen, Jed, is that
Yeah.
you said something, I'd already started to disassociate from Asda, but sometimes it's hard to leave a space that we know and we are, I say comfortable, not necessarily because we're celebrating and it's happy, but comfortable financially or comfortable because it's what we know and it's really hard to change.
But being part of the corporate world gives you so many opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a comfort blanket because you've got the trappings of it as well. So what you have is you have the regular pay, you have the pension, you have the car, you have the holiday, you have
Yeah.
the bonus, all these different things. They have the sick pay, all these kind of things which make life that little bit easier. And
Absolutely.
that's all there. But you are working within a very big machine. And you have to recognize that that's what I'm part of. I'm part of a machine.
And sometimes the machine spits us back out. But actually, as you said,
Yeah.
that's the push and the shove that many of us need or don't even realize we need until you're sort of spat out the other side. So
Yeah, I mean, I was going to go and work for a supplier,
right.
and that job disappeared. And then I thought, well, if that job's not there, what am I going to do?
So what did you decide to do?
It's interesting because I looked back, and it all came from LinkedIn.
Right.
So it came from a conversation that I had with a supplier who wasn't even in the commercial arena who I work with. She worked in finance for one of my biggest suppliers,
Mm-hmm.
and I got in contact with her and said, "Look, have you ever had, or does your team have GSCOP training?" And she came back saying no. So I thought, well, why don't I do that? Because I'd been a trainer.
Okay.
So when I was at Asda, I've done training. So I've been trained as a trainer.
Yeah.
So I've been doing training now for probably about 18 years. So everything from half day workshops through to full 2-day change management workshops.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of know how to do training and how to make it engaging.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought. Well, okay, well, I'll give that a go.
Yeah. Nice.
9 years later, I'm still
We're
giving it
still
a go.
here. So what was it like that year one?
Year one was a roller coaster in many different ways because what I decided, or what I didn't decide, what happened in that year is everything in my life changed.
Okay.
Literally everything. So I'd been married for nearly 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then that didn't work for various different reasons,
Mm-hmm.
amicable reasons, but that didn't work. So I then went from being part of the corporate world with everything
Mm-hmm.
to working for myself, living in a rented house with a leased car and a very unsecure business. But in that first year, it worked. So that the business came in. So it was there. I had what I needed. I realised that actually when I left Asda, one of the things that I'd had was a black book which was full of names.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you start in any kind of business, the better your black book is, the more likely you are going to succeed
Yeah.
because you've got the contacts, and that's what you need. In any if you ever work for yourself, you have to have the contacts,
Yeah.
people who you can speak to.
I absolutely agree. And we're going to come back to that. So we'll come back to the black book. What happened so you started out, and I'm really sorry to hear about the marriage, and I know you've got 2 children. Was there a dog involved as well?
Yeah. Oh
Oh my God.
yes,
And the
it was,
dog. So you literally
and the dog.
went from all of this
Yeah.
secure space of everything. And then over that 12
Yeah.
month period, things shifted and changed. Um,
Yeah.
how did year two go?
Year two was again. It was not quite as good as year one, but more than enough to get by.
Okay.
So it wasn't. It wasn't. I wasn't thinking right. Yeah. Now I'm going to struggle.
Okay.
Um,
What were you
but year
doing?
three.
Oh, but in year two, just so
Well,
context,
well,
what were you doing?
yeah. In year two, the black book was still enough. There was still. I still had enough from previous contacts.
Okay.
So I didn't. There weren't new people coming in. It was still people who I'd had conversations
Yeah.
with. When I looked back the other day about how many people I'd trained in those first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first year, it was about 70, early mid 70s.
Mm-hmm.
In the second year, it was about the same.
Uh-huh.
So those numbers, they were what I needed to get by, but
Yeah.
it was getting by.
Getting
It
by. Okay.
wasn't anything other than that.
Okay. And so still talking to the same people out of the black book, which is good.
Yeah.
Talking to the contacts, still delivering GSCOP and focusing there.
Just GSCOP. There was
Just
nothing.
GSCOP.
So it was. So what I was doing in the first 2 years was niche. Now, look, niche is good, but you then also have to think, okay, well, how long can I carry on just being this niche, because it is micro niche.
Oh, I like.
It's how long you can do that. Is understanding there's huge amount of value in being in a niche category, a huge amount. And that's what I've always tried to maintain. I've tried to maintain whatever category I do. I look at how do I maintain my value when I'm working, as well as adding value for people who I'm working with. But there comes a point where you have to think, I do need a little bit more than what I was just doing.
Okay.
Also, but not only for that, but also for my own sanity. Because if you're just doing the same thing over and over, you're not challenging yourself. And actually, I think
true.
anybody in any business needs to have a broader arena of things for their own mental capacity.
Interesting challenge. Let's get to a year three. What happened in year three?
Year three, the black book dried up.
Aha. And therefore?
And so I was literally within probably 4 months of having to go back to the corporate world, because I couldn't see a pipeline. I couldn't see a way of getting through that year with enough stuff coming through. There weren't enough new contacts that were coming in. So that was so because I started back in 2015. So 2015, 2016 they were okay. 2017 is where it was tough.
Yeah.
And for a large part of that year, I was living off a credit card. So I was paying for my food on a credit card. So there was no money in the bank. I wasn't putting money aside to make sure that I had money for tax bills that came through. When it came, obviously all the bills were paid, but it was seat of the pants stuff for 9 months of that year.
And I know you're not necessarily a feeling person because I've worked with you quite a bit, but how did that feel for you at that time?
It felt tough, but I've always had a level of belief that I can make it work. I've always believed that I'll find a solution.
Okay.
So, and that's been something I've stood by throughout my whole life. In every part, I always think there's always a solution to whatever the problem is. There is a solution, and you just have to find it, and you have to be able to give yourself the time to find it as well. And sometimes for some people, they don't have that luxury of that time. So the solution is there, but there isn't enough time to find it, and you have to just change. But for me, I thought, okay, well, how am I going to make it work?
And so I can imagine as well, and people might be listening to this thinking, is it very easy? And I think it must be because I do it this. I get stuck in a loop. So it'd be
Yeah.
very easy to have stayed in that loop and maybe in a spiral that went downwards of like self talk. I can't do this. This is not possible. This is really hard. This is really tough. Look, I can evidence it with my bank balance. I can evidence it with my lifestyle right now. And we can go down rather than level off.
Yeah, there is that. But for me, one of the things that when I started working for myself, actually there was a different motivator.
Go on then.
The motivator that I had to carry on at least for the next 18 months. I knew how I was, I thought I have to do it for at least, was my daughter was at primary school.
Right.
And I wanted to be around and present for her until she'd left primary school, which was 18 months away.
Ah,
And I was determined to do whatever I needed to do to be there. Because I knew that once most kids go to secondary school, they don't want you in the same sort of way. You become a taxi, you become a bank. But when you're at primary school, there's all sorts of things that you can be part of. And I've always been determined to be part of that for my kids.
wonderful.
And that was it. So I could do that. I could pick them up from school. I was there at the school gate. I would make sure I was there for whatever sporting event. It was all those different things. So I was there because I knew that if you miss them, you can't get them back. And to me, that was important.
Yeah.
That mattered.
Amazing. It sounds like that external motivator was enough to keep your momentum,
It was.
keeping you
Yeah.
looking forwards. So what happened then? Because we know you're still here. You're 9 years in
Yeah.
business, so that was 6 years ago. What changed in year three or towards the end of it, year three?
Yeah. So in year three, I had the opportunity to work with three other ex-ASDA colleagues who thought actually that what we could do with GSCOP was make it bigger. And they thought actually one was a lawyer, one was from PR, and one was from commercial. And we all worked together. So we thought actually, well, what we can do is our four of us will be stronger than just one.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. Now it became clear pretty early on that actually four wasn't strong. And actually, because one of them had his own other business, which was taking off significantly. So
Right.
he wasn't really involved. So in the end, it just ended up being the two of us, which is myself and a colleague who is actually has got from a commercial background. And we then continued and continue to work together, although now his role is far less than it ever has been. But what changed was bringing other people in, and all of a sudden you have to be more accountable for somebody else. And I think that was one of the biggest things that then changed. It became the motivator that I needed for me to start doing things differently. Now, did the business change because they brought in loads of business? No, they didn't. The business was all brought in by me. So it didn't. I didn't again start working for a business where other things were happening by other people and they were bringing in leads at all. That didn't happen. Only one lead in the past 7 years has been brought in by somebody else.
So my question is, what changed? So yeah, I get you became more accountable to others. Yes, there was a motivator that was external to you. And if you said, I was still bringing in all of the clients and finding the work. So what did you do differently then in your actions, your thinking, your behaviors?
I started looking at other different channels. So looking at, okay, well, where are the suppliers? Started looking for other different contacts and cold calling, in effect, for an element of what we did. So, and we also started working with trade bodies. So we did some work with the Food and Drink Federation, which put us into a different arena with working with their clients as well. So we looked at how we could broaden our reach and how could we actually get in front of more people. And that's something that I've always looked at is how can I broadcast what I do? And I've always looked for every single opportunity that I can to talk about what I do, or to talk about or talk around the market that I'm in. So rather than directly talking about what I do, talk about around the market that I'm in.
Could you, to help give a bit of context, like what does that look like, sound like?
Well, what it looked like when I first started, I get invited to go to conferences where I would speak at various different events. So, but I wasn't paid to go. I'd make sure that my travel and my costs were reimbursed. But sometimes I would be traveling out. I remember I went a couple of times to a conference in Geneva, which sounds very glamorous.
I think I know where you're going to
It was
say.
it was Geneva Airport.
A rather large.
Well, you don't actually even leave the
No,
airport.
you don't. Is that Carrefour?
No, that was for. It was for. It wasn't for. It was for a company that they connect buyers and suppliers.
Okay.
And I was there just doing a talk on both the days. But you fly into the airport, you stay in the airport, you leave the airport.
So sexy.
That's it. That's what you see of Geneva.
Amazing.
My view out of the hotel window was nothing.
The airport.
Yeah.
How else did you how else did you broaden your reach?
It was through other people's contacts. I would look at how other people had different contacts in the different arenas. So I was trying to go to different events where I'd meet people. But so that was it. That was it really. So, and then I think the over time, some of the longer lead time contacts that I've had started to come in.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I've always understood is if you have a conversation with somebody, particularly if you're doing training, the need is very rarely immediate. So there's always a lag.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of work out how long that lag is going to be. And then, there'll be times when actually it's now. I really need you now, but most times it's not. So, if you've got an empty book, an empty order book, then you're generally looking at 3 to 4 months before you're going to get anything coming in.
Correct.
Very rarely would you have something that happens tomorrow.
Absolutely. I've got a question. So you said, you connected with other people and it was often their contacts. This is what I can never get my head around. So was it as blatant as a conversation which said, who can you introduce me to? Who do you think I should talk to?
No, it was very rarely like that. Actually, quite often it would be someone. Might be introduced via them because I might have trained them.
Uh-huh.
So that is something that's happened over the past 9 years. I've actually been introduced to people because of who I've trained. They said actually they've had conversations in the background and put me in contact with people. So it's more of that than me saying, can you... I have done that as well.
Yeah.
So where we've identified... Because what we did is we looked at the trade magazine was the Grocer.
Yeah.
And every year you had the top 100 companies. So what we looked at is we looked at those top 100 companies.
Mm-hmm.
Who is in there? Mm-hmm. Who do we know? Who do we know who might know somebody in there? And then how do we then get in contact with them? And actually, it was just emails that we'd send out to people because we didn't have people's phone numbers. So, okay, well, how can we email them saying, are you interested?
And it is something about doing that hard graft and and just reaching out to people. How
Yeah,
successful was that cold calling technique?
not very.
Okay. So,
But it wasn't very successful. But what one of the things that I've done, and ever since I started working for myself, is I've always been on the phone to people. When I first started doing it, I was on the phone saying, "Do you want training?"
right.
And almost like every time I pick up the phone and say, "Oh, right, yeah, I've got some. Do you want?" What I've done over the years is I now never ask anyone, "Do they want training?"
Yeah.
What I do is I phone people up, and I phone people up regularly. We'll say regularly, 3, 4 times a year, generally
Hmm.
throughout. I've got a rolling, and what I do is I phone them from a chat, and what I did is because now I work with that many people, I talk to them about what I'm hearing, what am I seeing, and I'm giving them an insight into what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. So
Yeah.
that then helps them. But it
Absolutely.
also means that then when the training is needed, I'm at the forefront.
Yeah.
So I'm at them because we've had a conversation about something else. So I've stopped selling
Yeah.
directly what I do.
Can I just an earlier guest of mine, Mark Cranston? He has a business called Total Negotiation. Exactly the same. Is this a commercial thing? I don't know. Is it, but it's he says you don't. Yeah, you pick up the phone to have a chat, just to hear what's going
Yeah,
on. You share what you know. You make yourself relevant, and if if they need your help, they will ask for it. Or to your point, you remain top of mind, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I can go back to Jed. I can go back
yeah,
to Mark."
yeah,
Nice. So that's a really good idea as well. So creating that those connection points, and as you say, stay front of mind and stay relevant.
absolutely.
Um, I also know though that I sometimes hear your dulcet tones through my radio.
Every now and again.
Yeah, tell us about that. What am I
Yeah.
on about?
So one of the things that I've done ever since I first started doing this is I've understood the importance of PR,
Hmm.
of talking about topics.
Yeah,
And what I now I'm in the fortunate position actually that I do that on a regular basis. So whether it's the BBC, whether it's radio, TV, all the different channels. So I have work, and I regularly do work with all of them.
hmm,
Trade press as well. So all of the broadsheets, and also people like the Grocer
yeah,
that I'm commentating in there,
yeah,
and I'm giving an opinion on what I've seen based on 30 years of experience.
yeah,
So I've been in the sector quite a long time. I've worked for what was at that time the world's biggest retailer at a
yeah.
time when they were successful. So I've worked and I've seen so many different things. So what I can do now is I can talk about what I'm seeing,
Hmm.
and what it means. Because what I like to do is when I'm seeing things, okay, so what? What does it mean? What's next?
Absolutely. Like make relevance and make meaning. There's no point just commentating like on what it
Yes.
is. It's like, but what does that mean to me? What does that mean to a business? What does that mean to the
Yeah.
consumer?
So
Otherwise,
that's something that I started doing right back at the start. So,
how
and I
did
worked
you?
with it was with the grocer. So that's where I first started working with them, and then I picked up a couple of different contacts in the broadsheets.
Yeah,
So I worked with a couple of journalists, or a journalist in the Guardian for
yeah,
one. But then I can't remember when the first time I actually did it, when I went on the radio. But I've done the very early morning slots. So wake up to money. Done that quite a few, and that is early. That's 5:30 in the morning.
ow,
So, but then once you're in, particularly with the BBC, once you're in their black book,
yeah,
then you will get the calls, and I do get calls more and more
right, okay,
than I ever have. And once you're heard in one area, then you start to be heard and seen
in
in
others.
others, and then it becomes self fulfilling.
Okay, I have a question. Doing the PR like that, Do people get paid to do that?
I wish.
Okay, I'm curious because I know what value you're sharing.
Yeah. No, I don't do it. I don't do it to get paid. So
So
I don't get paid. I do it because what it does is I think it adds to my credibility.
okay,
So when people see who I am, they might have heard of me on whatever media outlet it
yeah,
might have been, or in whatever paper or it might be. So I think it just okay. Well, maybe this guy does know what he's talking about.
yeah, and then let's go back to pipeline. So year four, for example, you started to expand beyond the little black book. You started to, I don't know, get the grocer, look at the top 100. Who do we know? Who do we want to talk to? What what other, let's call them tactics, have you done to create your pipeline?
It's probably it's less what I have done. It's more about my clients, what's happened with my clients, because in the industry that I work in, people move around quite a lot,
Right.
and or they get promoted. So, and what I've done is I just built up my contacts, and that's what the thing that's happened for me over the past 9 years actually is I've kept building my black book. And now it is probably 10 times the size that it was when I left
Yeah.
Asda. And they're rich contacts. They're not people who I might have bumped into once. They're rich contacts. So I can have a conversation who I can pick the phone up to. And so that's what I then, when people move, they tend to take me with them
Yeah.
as a training provider.
Okay.
So that's how, over the years, more of that has happened. So people move out, and my network broadens as they
Yeah.
move as well.
One of the conversations we had as well is like, and you mentioned this earlier, you know, sometimes you need to pick up the phone, and we're moving into
You do,
I do notice people don't like picking up the telephone as much anymore. And I think there's a younger generation where a voice to voice conversation like is literally the scariest thing they could possibly do. But I
yeah.
guess I have a question. Is like, where do you find people's telephone numbers? How do you find people to?
Sometimes you find them in the grocer.
Mhm.
So when there are different pieces, because occasionally they have insights into different categories, and
Mhm.
suppliers will pay to be in there. And there you find out, okay, well, who's such and such, and there might be the name or a phone number in there. So that's where I looked.
Okay.
Normally, quite often it would be an email, but there'd be a contact that you could get.
Yeah. And then I think it's putting your big boy and girl pants on and picking up the phone.
It is, yeah.
And what I was going to say, what's it like? Explain to people what it's like talking to someone or cold calling when you don't know the other person at the other end.
That's hard work. So it's hard work if you don't know someone at the other end. Look, when I look at most of the conversations I've had haven't been 100% cold call. They
Okay.
might be someone I know via somebody, or might be put in contact with
Okay.
somebody. But picking the phone up, but I have done that as well. Is actually look, this is what I have, and it was much more direct selling
Yeah.
that of in effect of a product.
I think you mentioned something there that's really useful when it comes to broadening your network is getting introductions from other people.
Yeah,
I think that helps. And something else I've noticed, I've done it a few times, not all the time. If I'm asking someone to introduce me to someone they know, I'll even go as far as to say, I'll write you the email. I'll write you a
yeah,
paragraph of what I'd like you to say. Edit that. But I
yeah.
find it it takes the onus off the person who I'm asking a favor of.
It's how do you make it easy?
Yeah. Like, can you help me? Could you
Yeah,
introduce me? And this is what I'd love you to say if that's possible. And then they can do with
yeah.
that as they wish. How about LinkedIn? What are your thoughts on LinkedIn and broadening your network?
So LinkedIn is something that look, my business fundamentally transformed around the time when we first met. So, and it transformed back in 2020.
Right.
So, because before then, everything I'd done was face to face, and I was using LinkedIn, but not much. And I was putting things out, but not posting it. What I was doing actually back then, I was using a bot to automate and send out basically flyers about the workshops,
Right.
and sending out loads of automatic posts. They didn't get anywhere. It's the biggest waste of time I've ever done.
Yeah.
What actually happened in 2020, obviously, is everything then changed for me, is because I lost all my clients overnight, because it was all face to face, and I had to go online, and I did. So I think my last face to face workshop was something like the 12th of or 10th of March. Then by the start of May, I was up and running online.
Brilliant.
And I haven't looked back since.
Yeah.
That was also a time when I started to be a little bit more vocal on LinkedIn.
Right.
So what I started to have is commentate and have a voice about. So round when COVID first hit, my media involvement increased massively, because they wanted to what's happening. The amount of times I went on TV saying, "Stop stockpiling toilet roll." And it was because of what was happening in retail. If you think back to what happened in COVID, then the impact on retail, on shops, on everything changed. How we shopped changed. People went online. You had to queue to go in, or everything we did about shopping and retail changed. And I then started to be more vocal on LinkedIn as well.
Right.
And it was insight to, okay, what's happening?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? And then, okay, well, so what? What's going to happen next?
And I know, because I follow you on LinkedIn, and so even though I'm not in retail and supply anymore, I still find it really interesting what you're talking about, because as a consumer, I think it's really useful to know what's going on further up the supply chain, because it gives you a real insight into what you see happening at the retail store. And I think by me commenting on one of your posts, my brother, who's in sales, saw one of your posts, and I know he now follows you and has even, you two have spoken, but Tom found that really useful. So what you are putting out there on LinkedIn, I'd encourage anyone, whatever sector you're in, because we are all consumers. Go find that.
And I think it matters. It matters.
Yeah.
But for me, LinkedIn has been is powerful if you use it the right way. It's like any form of social media.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, if you don't like something, scroll past it.
Absolutely.
You have the option.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. It is the only place that I'm actually on with any social media. I'm not on anything else. It's the only place that I'm on, and I do it because of work.
Yeah, but and someone said to me when I was first learning where I wanted to be in social media land, they said, each of the platforms has a different vibe, and therefore, and also it's where are your people? So for you, if you TikTok and Instagram, I am guessing, are not necessarily where some of those business people hang out that you would like to talk to.
I don't know.
No.
So and it's not. It's not Facebook. But look, for some businesses, it is Facebook.
Exactly, absolutely, and that's what I'm saying.
But for my business, it's not. It's not Facebook. It's not Twitter. It's not Instagram. It's not TikTok.
Yeah.
So I'm not on any of them. So I actually came off them all in January 2020. I've not been on them since.
Oh wow! Whereas I use Instagram, because that's where I meet a lot of other facilitators and trainers. Maybe I should be on TikTok as well, but that I'd have to go off and do something that requires effort. That doesn't appeal. Twitter is just toxic. don't even participate there anymore. Facebook, I've just
Yeah,
got I have got a presence, and I know people follow us there, but I just can't be. Oh, Facebook just drains me. So yeah, Instagram and LinkedIn, and I enjoy the conversations on LinkedIn. It is a lot more. It is the
yeah,
professional workspace that for me is having
yeah.
those types of conversations and connections with people.
It is, and I think sometimes you get people posting on LinkedIn saying, "Why have you put that? It's why have you talked about your life? Why have you talked about something that's personal?" Well, actually, the way that I've always looked at business, business is personal. Business is people.
Yeah,
Business is relationships. It's understanding people. Why would you not talk about people and about each other?
yeah,
Because it's not just a company name, and you're not doing a business with a company name. So when you're at Diageo and I was at Asda, it wasn't Diageo and Asda. It was different
but
because
I think
it's all
also,
about people. It's all about connections.
but Jed, we're of a generation as well that where we were told, or I certainly was, to leave my personal life at the door and leave my personality at the door, and that I was
Yeah,
be back to part of a machine, and that was why I always felt quite. I remember just I'd had and maybe the same for you as that. I had a really good social life as well at Diageo, and some of my really good friends, even now to this day, came from Diageo, Guinness actually when I was at Guinness. But to be told, and I saw some people really pretzel themselves in that I knew what they were like outside of the work, and then inside of
yeah.
work, suddenly I saw this like shift, and I remember thinking, "What are you doing?" Because I couldn't do that, but it was
I couldn't
discouraged.
do that. Yeah, and that's there are some people who in the corporate world, and we've both worked for huge corporate businesses. There are some people who can be like that, and they
Yeah,
are split personalities. I've never, I could never do
no,
that. I would always be the same person out of work as I am in
yeah,
work because it makes life easier.
it's less hassle. So,
It is.
Jed, we have hop, skipped, and dumped through your timeline, and so what I'm noticing is in you, there was a really big resilience in that first 3 years and finding other ways. So I think some words that are jumping out at me, like, when something isn't working, find another route. There's another way to solve the problem. Work with other people as well, whether that's they are in your business or you surround yourself with like-minded people to help you talk through a
Yeah.
problem. I'm also hearing the power of the pipeline, and especially when we're dealing business to business, we do need a pipeline, and work doesn't just show up the next day just because you had a
No.
conversation, and be prepared to take it can take up to 3 months, and in some instances for some people 6 months.
Yeah.
The other thing I heard as well is the power of PR and how you do, whether you're in the national or international media space or just your own PR by picking up telephones or sending relevant emails to people and staying top of mind.
Yeah.
I think there's some really, really useful insights there for us all about thinking about how we're managing our own companies and our own
Well,
businesses.
yeah. Well, for me, one of the things that I've because of where I've come from, because I
Mm,
worked when you're working in a shop, you're adapting to what's happening in front of you every single day.
yeah,
And that's what I loved about retail is that actually that things were changing and you have to react to the changes.
yeah.
You can't just sit back and think, oh, it'll be all right. No,
Mm,
okay, well, you adapt and you have to adapt quickly. I loved that pace.
okay.
So that ability to see what's happening in front of you and think, right, is this something that I need to make a change for?
Yeah,
And that's something that I've loved being part of because the at times there is the adrenaline that you get from that
yeah,
change and from making it happen. One of my one of the an excerpt from a film which is Fields of Dreams,
yeah.
and the phrase has stuck with me for years. And it's like, if you build it, they will come.
Nice.
And I that's been my mantra all the way through. If I build it, they will come.
Love it.
And that is something that I've tried to do. I've tried to build a business that people will come to, and I don't have to broadcast what I do.
Wonderful. And that's why I've just named this episode, If You Build It, They Will Come. And this is Jed's shared with us so many insights on how we can all do that. Now, Jed, we finished the podcast with some quick fire questions.
Yeah.
Ready?
I'm ready.
What advice would you give someone starting out?
Be prepared for it to be tough. So, because there will always, having your own business, you have to understand the impact it will have on your life.
Yeah.
Because it can be consuming. And if you're not prepared for that, then it's probably not the thing for you.
Yeah.
So because you and that's, you have to be also, I think the most important things, you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Is this for me? Is this something that I can cope with?
Yeah. And can I take the flip of that as well? Be prepared to celebrate, be prepared for the good times, be prepared to go, oh, I can take holiday and go and enjoy myself.
Yeah. Oh, the flip side, the benefits of working for yourself are huge. So now that I choose to work with clients Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So on a Monday and Friday, I can do other things. I can work with, but I can do other things.
Yeah.
So, but the benefits are huge, but there are tough times to get there.
Yeah. And you've lived that. Any books that you recommend to people?
I was thinking about it, and during my years, I've read so many different books. I've not been actively reading in the same way that I was, particularly in kind of business style books. I do like what was it called? The Chimp Paradox.
Oh, yeah.
But I haven't read it but when I read it, it was something that I recognised that in me, and actually, what I've not from that, but actually over the years, I've got control of my chimp, and actually now, the voice in my head is so strong that it overwhelms everything.
Yeah. If you've never read The Chimp Paradox, I totally recommend it. It's by Dr. Steve Peters, who is a sports psychologist, and he worked with. I'm going to get the name wrong, not Tony Brailsford, but basically with Sky Cycling to begin with. And then quite a few of the British and the GB Olympians. Some fascinating stories about working with Ronnie O'Sullivan, the snooker player. He's got a fascinating set of stories about his chimp, to say the least.
A big part of it was confidence.
Yeah.
It's all about confidence and how do you be more confident?
Yeah. Final question. How have you invested in yourself or your business to help you move forward?
The best investment that I had was around the time when we met, which was investing in time to learn how to use different tools such as Zoom. I'd never heard of Zoom.
Right.
I always look at how can I be better at what I do, and that's what I want is for any of my customers who I work with, I want them to have the best possible experience. So by investing in that and understanding how to, actually, it's improved my face-to-face because I realize actually I need to up my game.
Yeah.
So that's by looking at what I did there. I think that was the best investment. But I'm always looking for opportunities. How can I learn? I want to keep learning.
Yeah, and there's probably some savvy quotes out there about the person who keeps on learning is the person that keeps on growing. Jed, thank you for this conversation. It's been great.
Pleasure.
It's been so insightful, and thank you for coming on and sharing your story and how you've gone from those in the first 2 years, which were okay, that third year that was like I say, just a very big challenge, and now where you are today, in a thriving business. Thank you,
Yeah.
and good luck.
Thanks. Good to chat.